In this video series, we will learn how hardware wallets work and also implement a very simple one. Basically, it will be very simple hardware wallet. It will be able to generate initial entropy, derive individual keys from this entropy, show us the addresses, the master public key such that we could import that into our watch-only software wallet, and also we will be able to parse, display, and sign PSBT transactions, basically Bitcoin transaction with some extra metadata. Okay, every video will be split into parts. It will have a theory part where we will discuss what is happening under the hood, and then the implementation part where we will actually write it for the actual hardware. Before we go there, let's discuss the overall purpose of the hardware wallet and what do we require from it. So we want to move our private keys away from our computer to a dedicated device that only stores the keys and signs the transactions. Because we don't want to lose our private keys just because we were not very careful in the internet. So this means that our device should be as simple as possible, as stupid as possible. It should, in order to reduce the attack surface. So the smaller the attack surface, the smaller the code base is, the lower is the probability of the hack. Also we want to be able to see what exactly we are signing. So we need some kind of trusted peripherals like a display. And also to interact with us, we need either a touchscreen or the buttons or whatever. Yeah. One important part of the hardware wallet is the communication channel with the host. Because our main goal is to protect our private keys from the remote attacks. So we always consider that our host, our computer, is compromised. And this communication channel is basically very well controlled by our host as well. So I would strongly recommend something like an air-gapped communication channel, for example, SD card, that's what Cold Card does, or the QR codes. This is what our Spectre DIY does. And USB is kind of fine, Bluetooth is also fine, but the ugly thing about these communication protocols is that it is bidirectional and very interactive. But yeah, it depends on the security model of the hardware wallet and of yourself. So it's up to you to decide what you want to use. Okay. The first thing is we need to reduce the attack surface. This means that we don't want to run the hardware wallet on some kind of Linux distribution or some very powerful device. So we would better stick with the microcontrollers. Just because there we have a much better way to control what exactly is happening there, and also the whole code base is pretty small. Basically, you end up with only the drivers for the peripherals that you get from the vendor, from the manufacturer of the microcontroller. Okay. There are a few options for the architectures that we can use. The most common one in the microcontroller world is ARM Cortex M series, and now we also have the RISC-V architecture that appeared pretty recently, and it is really interesting project. It is like open source, open instruction set, so anyone could implement the RISC-V core based on FPGA or yeah, on the semiconductor level. But in principle, you could even use something like x86 if you could manage to write a bare metal application. Yeah. Then regarding the languages. For the very long time, the only language that was available for microcontrollers was actually C and C++. But recently it changed a bit, so we now have MicroPython, and both CodeCard and Trezor are actually using MicroPython for their main application logic. And also there is Rust, and in particular embedded Rust, that is still pretty new, and there are not many projects that are using Rust in the embedded world, but it's definitely worth looking at it. If you know Rust, there is already a way to write a microcontroller firmware in Rust, so I should probably look into that as well, but didn't get to it yet. Okay, and then slightly separately from all that is Java. So it is Pretty popular in the world of secure elements and secure microcontrollers. Basically, if you want to have a real hardware security in your hardware wallet, you want to use secure elements. And with secure elements, you have two options. Either you sign an NDA with the manufacturer of the secure element, a non-disclosure agreement, and they give you the proprietary like libraries and API and documentation how to talk to the microcontroller on the low level, or you don't sign anything and then they ship you the microcontroller with the Java virtual machine where it already implements all the hardware security features, but you don't have direct access to them, so you only can write a high-level logic. And in principle, it is fine because, well, you at least get some hardware security measures. But yeah, the question is how much do you trust the vendor and how much do you trust this Java virtual machine that was not audited by the open source community? So in this series, we will focus on MicroPython, but we will write MicroPython, well, logic, application logic in MicroPython, but there are some parts that are still running in C and C++. In particular, all the drivers for the communication with the peripherals are written in C. And also you really want to use C implementations of the cryptography, because in MicroPython or even in Rust you cannot really write a constant time implementations of the crypto. So you want to use some lower level implementations like either assembler or C with assembler parts or just C. And in our setup, what we're going to use, we're going to write everything in MicroPython. And we will use Bitcoin Core's SegP256K1 library for elliptic curve calculations, and we will use the LVGL library for GUI programming. Just because we actually have a very nice bindings from these C libraries to the MicroPython, we can just use them directly from MicroPython. And later on, that's what we are working on at the moment. We will integrate the secure element into the project, but it will happen a little bit later. Okay, let's have a look at the hardware. So we will work with this board. This is the board. I should probably write it here. STM32F469 discovery board. And I really like this board because it has basically everything that we need for the hardware wallet. So it has a pretty high resolution screen. So the screen is 480 by 800 pixels. So pretty good. It has a very powerful microcontroller. It is a Cortex M4 microcontroller that has some memory, like and the flash around, I think 2 megabytes of flash and 256 or maybe a little bit more kilobytes of RAM. If this is not enough, then we can also use the external memory and the external flash, QSPI flash, to put more code in there. But here we need to be a little bit careful because this chip can be read out easily or replaced with something else. So basically there is a way to connect to this chip and to replace the content of it from the external world. So it's a bit tricky. You shouldn't trust the QSPI, but still for prototyping it is great. It's great that we have enough space. Also what we have an SD card if you want to make it a cold card style, and it also has the Arduino headers. This means that any Arduino Shield extension board can be plugged in directly to this board and it will just work. So this is also pretty nice. And also what we have, we also have two USB ports. So this is the micro USB. It is connected, How do I stop it? Yeah. It is directly connected to the microcontroller, so we can make our microcontroller appear as a USB drive or as a virtual serial port or just directly over USB, like a normal USB device. And also we have another, this is a mini USB. And this guy, together with this one, this is another microcontroller, they make everything very convenient in sense of uploading the firmware, for example. So basically the only purpose of this microcontroller here is to flash the firmware into the main microcontroller. So when you connect your board to your computer over mini USB cable, it will appear as a USB drive, and you can easily upload new firmware by just drag and dropping the file into this USB drive. Another nice thing, yeah, so just a few things to mention. This black button is the reset, and this blue button is just a user button. So we could use it if we want. Also, it has 4 LEDs. So when we just start working with the hardware, we can check that, yeah, it blinks, it is alive, awesome. And another thing is that it also has 2 microphones. So it's not like to make your hardware wallet listen to you, but it's more like it can be used as an additional source of randomness, of entropy that we mix together with the output of a true random number generator. So this is actually another important feature, that this microcontroller also has a true random number generator. So we can use it to generate our initial entropy, our initial recovery phrase. Okay, so this is the review of the hardware, and I hope you roughly got the idea of what we're gonna do. And I think that we should now get to the actual setup of the hardware. So I will show you how to connect it, how to make it running with MicroPython, and how to start programming with it.